Courage is not about winning every battle. It is not about being fearless. Courage, as Brené Brown reminds us in Dare to Lead, is about showing up when you cannot predict the outcome, speaking the truth even when your voice shakes, and creating spaces where others feel safe enough to do the same. We live in a world that rewards certainty, control, and polished perfection. But real leadership is messy. It requires vulnerability, hard conversations, and the willingness to step into the unknown. This book is not about quick leadership hacks or memorizing strategies to get ahead. It is about learning how to lead from the heart, how to build trust, and how to cultivate a culture where people can bring their full selves to the work they do. Brené Brown has spent 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. Her research shows that the bravest leaders are not the ones who avoid discomfort but the ones who walk straight into it, guided by values they refuse to compromise. These leaders are not perfect, far from it. But they are deeply human, and that is exactly why people follow them. In the chapters ahead, we will explore how courage is built, how trust is earned, and how leaders can replace fear with connection. We will look at real-world examples from executives transforming corporate cultures to teachers reshaping classrooms, and even parents learning to lead at home. If you are ready to move past the idea that leadership is about having all the answers, and instead embrace the truth that leadership is about asking better questions, listening deeply, and daring to be seen, then you are ready for this journey. This is Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, brought to you by Books Arena. Let us begin. When we think about courage, many of us imagine big, dramatic moments: a firefighter charging into a burning building, a soldier standing firm in the middle of chaos. But Brené Brown begins by showing us that courage is built in much smaller, quieter moments, the kind that happen in everyday conversations, meetings, and decisions. She tells the story of a CEO she worked with who had to give feedback to one of his top-performing managers. The numbers were excellent, but the manager's behavior was eroding trust on the team. The easy path would have been to ignore it, to protect the numbers and avoid the discomfort of confrontation. Instead, the CEO chose to have the conversation. He sat down with the manager, shared the impact of their behavior, and invited them to work together on a plan to change. It was uncomfortable, it was risky, but it was the kind of leadership moment that defines a culture. This is where Brené's core idea comes in: you cannot have courage without vulnerability. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Every time you make a decision without knowing how it will turn out, every time you speak up without being sure people will agree, you are practicing vulnerability. And that is the foundation of brave leadership. Think about a teacher standing in front of a new class on the first day of school. She could keep her distance, maintain a wall of authority, and avoid showing too much of herself. Or she could choose to be real, to share why she became a teacher, to admit that she is excited and nervous, and to invite her students to share something about themselves. That choice to connect, even at the risk of rejection, builds trust from the start. Brené shares research showing that when leaders model vulnerability, it has a ripple effect. People are more likely to speak up with new ideas, to admit mistakes, and to collaborate without fear of looking foolish. On the other hand, when leaders hide behind perfectionism and certainty, teams become guarded, innovation dries up, and problems get buried instead of solved. One powerful example comes from the U.S. military. In one unit Brené studied, the commanding officer began each weekly briefing by sharing a mistake he had made that week and what he had learned from it. At first, the soldiers were stunned. But soon, others started doing the same. The culture shifted from one of fear and blame to one of shared responsibility and growth. Of course, vulnerability without boundaries is not the goal. Brené is clear that leaders need to pair vulnerability with clarity. Being open does not mean oversharing or dumping emotions without purpose. It means sharing in a way that serves the team and the mission. She also introduces what she calls rumbling with vulnerability, staying in the discomfort long enough to find real answers instead of rushing to shut it down. Most of us want to skip straight to resolution, to tie everything up neatly. But in leadership, the growth happens in the messy middle, when you keep asking questions and listening even when it is hard. Take the example of a nonprofit director facing budget cuts. The easy move would be to quietly cut programs and hope no one complains. A braver choice is to call the staff together, lay out the situation honestly, and invite their input. It is uncomfortable because you cannot predict where the conversation will go. But by engaging the team, you create ownership, trust, and often better solutions than you could have found alone. At the heart of part 1 is this truth: courage and comfort cannot coexist. You can choose safety and control, or you can choose growth and impact, but not both at the same time. Breen leaves us with a challenge. The next time you are tempted to play it safe, to avoid speaking up, to hold back an idea or avoid a difficult conversation, pause and ask yourself, what would it look like to lead with courage here? And then, even if your voice shakes, do that. If part 1 was about understanding that courage cannot exist without vulnerability, part 2 takes us deeper into the practical side of leading with heart. Brené Brown calls this living into our values, not just knowing what we believe, but acting on it consistently, especially when it is hard. She begins with a story about a senior leader in a large tech company. This man prided himself on being customer-focused. He would say it in every meeting. But when a major product flaw was discovered right before launch, he pushed the team to hide the issue and release anyway, worrying more about quarterly earnings than customer trust. In that moment, his stated value and his actual behavior were miles apart, and his credibility with the team took a hit that was hard to repair. Brené's point is simple: values are not words on a poster or phrases in a mission statement. They are the choices we make every day. Real leadership means knowing what matters most to you and letting those priorities guide your decisions, even when there is pressure to compromise. She suggests that instead of trying to live by a long list of corporate values, leaders should identify 1 or 2 core values that drive everything. For example, a school principal might choose equity and respect. That means every decision from hiring teachers to designing curriculum has to align with those values. If it does not, it is not the right decision, no matter how tempting it seems in the short term. Brené uses a vivid example from sports. Imagine a coach whose core value is team over individual. That value will shape how the coach reacts when a star player breaks a rule. If the coach truly believes in the team-first principle, the star player faces the same consequences as everyone else, even if it costs them a championship. It is not easy, but it builds trust and sends a clear signal: this leader stands for something real. Living into values also means communicating them clearly. People cannot follow what they cannot see. Brené tells the story of a leader in the healthcare industry who, during a chaotic merger, kept reminding her team, "Our patients come first." She repeated it in every meeting, every memo, and every decision discussion. Over time, even when hard trade-offs were necessary, the team knew exactly how to choose because the leader's values were not just words, they were instructions for action. But here is the hard part: living into values will often put you in direct conflict with others who want to cut corners, take the easy way out, or protect themselves. Brené calls these moments values in the arena, when you are face to face with real resistance, and you have to decide if you will stand firm or back down. She shares an example of a manager who refused to manipulate performance metrics to make the department look better. She knew it might cost her a promotion, but she also knew honesty was one of her non-negotiable values. Months later, when a crisis hit the company, she was chosen to lead a recovery team precisely because people trusted her integrity. In leadership, values are like a compass. They do not remove the storms, but they keep you from drifting off course. Without them, it is easy to get lost in fear, ego, or short-term gain. Brené leaves us with a practical step: write down your top 2 values. Then ask yourself, what does it look like to live these values at work? What does it look like to live them at home? Keep those answers close, because when pressure hits, it is your actions, not your intentions, that define who you are as a leader. If values are the compass that guides us, then trust is the foundation that holds everything together. In part 3, Brené Brown takes us into what she calls braving trust, a framework that breaks trust into specific, actionable elements. She begins with a story about a team retreat she facilitated. On the surface, the group looked high-functioning. They hit their goals, kept meetings polite, and avoided major conflicts. But when Brené asked them to rate the level of trust within the team, the room went quiet. One person finally said, "We are good at being nice, but I do not think we are good at being real." That comment opened the floodgates. People began sharing how they avoided asking for help, how they hid mistakes, and how they tiptoed around sensitive topics. This is where braving comes in. The acronym stands for boundaries, respecting what is okay and what is not. Reliability, doing what you say you will do. Accountability, owning your mistakes and making amends. Vault, keeping what is shared in confidence. Integrity, choosing courage over comfort. Non-judgment, being able to ask for help without fear of shame. Generosity, assuming the best intentions in others. Brené explains that trust is not built in one big gesture, it grows through small, Consistent actions. A manager who keeps deadlines, admits when they are wrong, and follows through on promises builds trust brick by brick. On the other hand, breaking even one element, gossiping about a private conversation, failing to take responsibility, crossing a boundary can make trust crumble quickly. She gives an example from education. A high school teacher told her students, "If you come to me with a personal struggle, I will never share it without your permission, unless someone's safety is at risk." Over the semester, students began opening up more. Why? Because she set clear boundaries and stuck to them. That is how trust feels in action. One powerful insight Breen shares is that we often think about whether others are trustworthy, but we rarely ask if we are trustworthy. That shift in perspective is a game changer for leaders. It means asking yourself, do I respect other people's boundaries? Can people count on me to do what I said I would? Do I admit my mistakes quickly? Do I avoid sharing what is not mine to share? She tells the story of a project lead who kept promising to review her team's work within 24 hours but often took several days. She was reliable in every other way, but this repeated delay was slowly eroding trust. When she realized it, she stopped overpromising, set realistic deadlines, and delivered on time. That small change repaired the team's confidence in her. Breen also points out that generosity, the G in braving, is one of the hardest parts. It means giving people the benefit of the doubt instead of jumping to the worst interpretation of their actions. For example, if a colleague misses a meeting, instead of thinking, "They do not respect my time," you might think, "Maybe something urgent came up, I will check in." That shift keeps relationships from deteriorating over misunderstandings. But trust is fragile. Once it is broken, it can be rebuilt, but it takes much longer. Breen shares the story of a company where a leader leaked confidential restructuring plans, causing panic. When confronted, the leader apologized and committed to rebuilding trust. It took over a year of consistent, careful action before the team felt safe again. Part 3 ends with a reminder: trust is not a soft skill, it is a measurable, tangible requirement for real leadership. Without trust, teams may function, but they will never truly thrive. With it, they can navigate even the toughest challenges together. If trust is the foundation of brave leadership, then one of the biggest threats to that foundation is what Brené Brown calls armored leadership. In Part 4, she explores how leaders protect themselves with armor behaviors designed to avoid vulnerability, and how that armor, while it feels safe, actually weakens our ability to connect, inspire, and create real change. She opens with the story of a high-level executive named Carla. Carla had built her career on always having the right answer. In meetings, she rarely admitted when she did not know something. If a project failed, she redirected blame toward external factors or her team's execution. On the surface, she looked confident and in control. But inside, Carla was exhausted. She spent so much energy managing her image that she had little left for creativity or risk-taking. And her team? They had stopped bringing her bad news or bold ideas, because they knew she did not want to hear anything that might make her look uncertain. Breen describes this as the trap of perfectionism and control. Leaders put on armor to protect themselves from feeling exposed, but that same armor keeps them from being truly seen. It signals to their teams, "I do not make mistakes, and you should not either." The result is fear, stagnation, and a lack of innovation. She contrasts Carla's story with that of a different leader, James, who took over a struggling department. In his very first meeting, James said, "I do not have all the answers. We are going to figure this out together. And I will make mistakes, probably a lot of them, but I promise I will own them, and we will learn from them." That openness created a space where the team felt safe to experiment and speak up, even when things went wrong. Within a year, the department was outperforming expectations. Breen lays out some of the most common types of armor leaders were: hiding behind cynicism, dismissing new ideas as unrealistic before they are even explored; weaponizing competence, using expertise as a shield to avoid asking for help; floodlighting oversharing in a way that pushes people away instead of creating connection; chasing status, prioritizing looking successful over doing meaningful work. She tells the story of a nonprofit board meeting where a young member suggested a bold, unconventional fundraising idea. The chair of the board immediately laughed and said, "That is cute, but let's be serious." The room went silent. That one moment of cynicism shut down creativity for the rest of the meeting. The leader's armor had protected him from risk, but it had cost the group a chance at innovation. Taking off the armor is not about being less strong, it is about being strong in a different way. Breen calls this daring leadership. It means choosing curiosity over judgment, accountability over blame, and clarity over false harmony. One exercise she recommends is noticing when you are tempted to use armor. Maybe you are in a meeting and someone challenges your idea. Your instinct might be to snap back with sarcasm or overwhelm them with data. Instead, you can pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to protect right now? My ego, my status, my image. That self-awareness is the first step to leading without armor. She gives the example of a hospital administrator who caught herself shutting down junior nurses' concerns because she was in a rush. After realizing this was a form of armor avoiding the discomfort of slowing down, she changed her approach. She began setting aside 5 minutes in every shift meeting for open discussion, no matter how busy things got. Over time, this simple shift built trust and improved patient outcomes. Breen's message is clear: the armor we think makes us strong often keeps us from doing our best work. When leaders have the courage to take it off, they make space for honesty, creativity, and deep connection. And in the long run, that is what truly protects a team. If part 4 was about removing the armor, part 5 is about replacing it with something far more powerful: clarity and empathy. Breen Brown says that clear is kind, unclear is unkind. It sounds simple, but in practice, clarity takes courage. She starts with a story about a manager named Olivia. Olivia hated giving critical feedback. She worried about hurting people's feelings, so she softened her words, skipped over key points, and hoped the other person would just get it. One of her team members, Marcus, kept missing deadlines. Instead of telling him directly, Olivia said things like, "You might want to work on time management a little," or "we should try to move faster next time." Marcus thought he was doing fine. 6 months later, Olivia gave him a poor performance review, and Marcus was shocked and angry. The damage was done not because of the feedback itself, but because Olivia had been unclear for too long. Breen explains that being unclear is often our way of avoiding discomfort, but it is actually selfish. It protects us from an awkward moment, but it robs the other person of the chance to improve. Leaders who want trust and results have to be willing to say the hard things with empathy, not shame. She tells the story of a teacher who lived by the phrase "clear is kind." When students fell behind, she did not say, "You need to try harder." Instead, she sat with them, explained exactly where they were struggling, and outlined a plan to get them back on track. The students might not have enjoyed hearing they were behind, but they trusted her because she was direct and genuinely wanted them to succeed. Clarity also applies to expectations. Breen describes walking into a meeting where the leader said, "We need to be more innovative." The team nodded, but when she asked them individually what innovative meant, she got wildly different answers. Without specifics, they were set up for frustration and misalignment. Clear leaders define exactly what success looks like, how it will be measured, and why it matters. But clarity without empathy can feel cold. This is where daring leaders separate themselves from authoritarian ones. Breen points out that empathy is not about fixing someone's problem or minimizing their pain. It is about connecting to the emotion they are experiencing and showing them they are not alone in it. She shares an example from the corporate world. A sales team had just lost a major client. Their manager could have jumped straight into problem-solving mode, saying, "We will get another client, let's move on." Instead, he acknowledged the loss. He said, "I know many of you worked late nights for months on this deal. It hurts to lose it. Let's take a moment to talk about what we are feeling before we figure out our next step." That moment of empathy gave the team space to process, which made them more ready to tackle the solution. Breen makes it clear that empathy is a skill anyone can learn. It starts with listening, really listening without planning your response while the other person is talking. It means asking questions instead of assuming. And it requires the courage to sit with someone's discomfort without trying to make it go away too quickly. She also warns against what she calls fake empathy, when leaders use phrases like "I understand" but quickly pivot to their own experience, turning the focus back to themselves. True empathy keeps the focus on the other person's perspective. Part 5 ends with a challenge. The next time you find yourself avoiding a tough conversation, ask yourself if you are choosing short-term comfort over long-term trust. And when you do have that conversation, pair your clarity with genuine empathy. In the long run, your team will respect you far more for it. If clarity and empathy are the tools of daring leadership, then courage is the fuel that powers them. In Part 6, Brené Brown shows that courage is not something you are born with, it is something you practice. She begins with the story of a product launch at a tech company. The team had been working for months, and 2 weeks before release, they discovered a serious flaw. The project manager, Ethan, had a choice: quietly push the launch through and hope no one noticed, or bring the problem to leadership and risk delaying everything. Ethan took a deep breath and chose the harder path. He called an emergency meeting, laid out the issue, and recommended postponing. The leadership team was not happy, but they respected his honesty. When the product finally launched, it performed better than expected, and Ethan's willingness to speak up became a model for others in the company. Brené says this is courage in action, doing what is right even when it is uncomfortable, even when you cannot guarantee the outcome. Courage often feels messy in the moment, but in hindsight, it is what builds trust and credibility. She also emphasizes that courage is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like quietly advocating for a teammate, admitting you made a mistake before anyone notices, or saying, "I do not know, but I will find out." Brené introduces 4 skill sets that make courage more accessible. Rumbling with vulnerability, leaning into difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. Living into our values, letting your actions reflect what you truly believe. Braving trust, building it through consistent, small behaviors. Learning to rise, recovering quickly and resiliently after setbacks. She tells the story of a nurse in a busy emergency room who spotted a dangerous dosing error in a patient's chart. Speaking up meant challenging a senior doctor in front of others, something that could be risky for her career. But she knew her values included protecting patients at all costs. She spoke up respectfully but firmly, and the error was corrected immediately. Later, the doctor thanked her, admitting that her courage might have saved a life. Brené also addresses the myth that courageous leaders are fearless. In reality, they feel fear, they just move forward anyway. Courage, she says, is a habit built through small acts. Every time you choose honesty over comfort, you strengthen your capacity to be brave in bigger moments. One of her favorite examples comes from a classroom. A teacher invited her students to share ideas for improving the school, knowing some of the suggestions might be critical. A shy student stood up and said, "Sometimes teachers make us feel like our questions are dumb." The room went silent. Instead of getting defensive, the teacher said, "Thank you for telling me that. I am going to think about how I can change that." That simple act of listening without reacting took courage, and it made the entire class feel safer to speak up. Part 6 closes with a reminder that courage is contagious. When leaders take risks, admit mistakes, and stand up for what is right, they give permission for everyone else to do the same. And when courage becomes part of a team's culture, extraordinary things can happen. If courage is contagious, then culture is the container that determines how far it spreads. In this final part, Brené Brown focuses on building a culture where daring leadership is the norm, not the exception. She begins with the story of a retail company that had a high turnover rate and constant gossip among employees. The CEO, Priya, was frustrated. She had tried raising salaries, adding perks, and organizing team events, but nothing changed. Then she realized the issue was not benefits or morale, it was culture. People did not feel safe enough to speak openly, so they vented behind closed doors. Leaders avoided hard conversations, and accountability was rare. Priya decided to reset the tone. In a company-wide meeting, she acknowledged the problem, admitted her role in it, and laid out a new standard: no more talking about people instead of to them. She trained leaders in Brené's Rumble conversations, direct, respectful, and vulnerable dialogues about what is really going on. Within a year, turnover dropped, trust increased, and employees began solving problems together instead of blaming each other. Brené says that creating a brave culture starts with values. It is not enough to have words like integrity or collaboration on a poster. Leaders must define what those values look like in action. If integrity is a value, it might mean always telling the truth about timelines, even if the news is bad. If collaboration is a value, it might mean actively seeking input from every team member before making a decision. She gives the example of a sports coach who defined his team's value of respect very specifically: no one is late to practice, no one talks when someone else is talking, and everyone cheers for their teammates. These clear behaviors made it easy for players to hold each other accountable without personal conflict. Another cornerstone of a brave culture is learning to recover from mistakes together. Brené tells the story of a marketing campaign that flopped badly. Instead of pointing fingers, the team held a "what went wrong" session. Each person shared one thing they could have done better, including the leader. By modeling accountability instead of blame, the leader turned a failure into a bonding experience, and the team's next campaign was one of their most successful ever. Breen also warns about the traps that destroy brave cultures, rewarding exhaustion as a status symbol, tolerating bad behavior from high performers, and confusing being busy with being productive. In a brave culture, leaders notice when people are burning out, they address toxic behavior immediately, and they measure success by results, not hours worked. She shares a small but powerful practice called permission slips. Before a meeting, participants write down a personal permission they need to show up fully. It might be, I give myself permission to ask questions, or I give myself permission to admit I am struggling. This simple step helps people drop some of their armor and be more open in conversations. In the end, Breen makes it clear, building a culture of courage is not about one big change, it is about many small, consistent actions that show people it is safe to be real, take risks, and learn together. Leaders set the tone, but everyone has a role in sustaining it. She closes with this truth: brave work, tough conversations, and whole hearts are the keys to daring leadership. It is not the easy path, but it is the one that leads to deeper trust, stronger teams, and results that last. As we come to the end of Dare to Lead, one message stands out above all others: leadership is not about titles, corner offices, or having all the answers. It is about courage. It is about showing up with an open heart, even when the outcome is uncertain. Breen Brown has shown us that daring leadership begins with vulnerability, grows through empathy, and thrives in cultures built on trust. We have seen leaders who face uncomfortable truths instead of hiding from them, who speak with clarity even when it is hard, and who stand up for their values even when it costs them something. Think back to the stories: the teacher who listened to her student without defensiveness, the nurse who spoke up to protect her patient, the CEO who rebuilt a culture from the ground up. None of them were fearless. They felt the discomfort, the risk, and the possibility of failure. But they acted anyway. That is what sets daring leaders apart. If there is one thing to carry forward from this book, it is that courage is not a rare gift. It is a skill we can practice every day in small ways. It is choosing honesty over ease, accountability over blame, and connection over disconnection. It is having the hard conversation now so trust is stronger later. In your own life, whether you are leading a team, a classroom, a family, or simply yourself, remember that the world does not need more perfect leaders. It needs more brave ones. And every time you choose courage, you make it a little easier for the people around you to do the same. This is Dare to Lead. This is what it means to work with whole hearts, to have tough conversations, and to create brave spaces where people can do their best work. Thank you for joining me here on Books Arena. Until next time, keep daring, keep leading, and keep showing up with the courage to be seen. Welcome to Books Arena. Today, we dive into a skill that can change your relationships, your career, and even your life: the art of having crucial conversations. A crucial conversation is not just any talk. It is the kind of discussion where opinions differ, emotions run high, and the outcome could change everything. These moments often come without warning: a disagreement with your boss, a difficult talk with your partner, or a conflict with a friend. And most people either avoid them, handle them poorly, or let them explode into arguments. But imagine if, instead of dreading these conversations, you could approach them with confidence. Imagine staying calm, speaking honestly, and truly understanding the other person, even when the stakes are high. The truth is, our success in life is often determined not by how we act when things are easy, but by how we communicate when things are tense. In these moments, words can build bridges, or burn them. In this journey, we will learn how to master those high-stakes talks, so that instead of creating distance, they create connection and results. So, let us step into the world of crucial conversations and discover how the right words, spoken the right way, can change everything. Part 1: What makes a conversation crucial? Picture this. You are at work, and your manager walks into the room looking frustrated. He says, "We need to talk about your performance." Your heart skips a beat. The air feels heavier. You try to prepare a response, but you already know this is not going to be an easy chat. Or maybe it's at home. Your partner says, "We need to discuss our finances," or "I am not happy with how things are going." Suddenly, you can feel tension rising. In moments like these, you are standing at a crossroads. This is what the authors of Crucial Conversations call a high-stakes conversation. It's crucial because three things are happening at once. First, the stakes are high, the outcome really matters. Second, emotions are running strong and those emotions can cloud judgment. Third, opinions differ, you see things one way, and the other person sees them another. Now, here's the thing, most of us are not at our best in these moments. We either fight, becoming defensive or aggressive, or we flee, avoiding the conversation altogether. And when we do speak, we often speak in ways that damage trust or shut down dialogue. But here's the truth, it's not the disagreement that ruins relationships or careers, it's how we handle it. The world's best leaders, negotiators, and communicators do not avoid tough conversations. They master them. The first step in mastering a crucial conversation is to recognize when you are in one. Many people miss this. They think they are just talking, but the signs are already there. Your voice is tighter, your heartbeat is faster, and you start rehearsing what you will say in your head. In other words, your body knows the conversation is crucial before your mind does. In one real-world example, a nurse noticed a surgeon skipping a safety step during an operation. She knew saying something could save the patient's life, but it could also put her job at risk if the surgeon reacted badly. This was a crucial conversation in its purest form: high stakes, strong emotions, and differing opinions. The nurse chose to speak up, but not with anger or accusation. Instead, she used curiosity, respect, and clear facts. The surgeon listened, the step was corrected, and the patient's life was saved. That is the power of handling a crucial conversation well. The authors stress a key point here: when it matters most, we often do our worst. That is human nature. Our brain senses danger, not physical danger, but social danger, and our fight or flight response kicks in. That is why people either lash out or shut down. To change this pattern, we must learn a new habit: instead of reacting, we pause and create a safe space for dialogue. Safety is not about making the other person comfortable with your ideas, it is about making them feel respected enough to listen. People rarely listen to someone who they feel is attacking them. But they will listen if they feel understood. One useful insight from this part of the journey is this: we often confuse winning an argument with solving a problem. In a crucial conversation, winning is not about beating the other person. Winning is when both sides walk away feeling heard, respected, and committed to a shared outcome. Think of a time you were in a heated argument. Maybe with a colleague, maybe with a friend. If you are honest, you will notice that at some point, you stopped listening and started planning your next comeback. That is the turning point where most conversations go wrong. The authors suggest we need to shift from a mindset of argument to a mindset of dialogue. Dialogue means a free flow of meaning between people. Instead of defending your position like a fortress, you open up space where both sides can place their thoughts on the table and examine them together. In practice, this means noticing when emotions are getting in the way. Asking yourself, what do I really want here? For me? For them? For the relationship? Keeping the purpose of the conversation at the center, instead of letting ego take over. This is easier said than done, which is why most people need to practice it. But once you understand that the real enemy in a crucial conversation is not the other person, but the breakdown of dialogue, you start to approach things differently. Here is the bottom line for part 1: crucial conversations are defining moments. They are the points where relationships are either strengthened or weakened. When handled well, they can solve problems, build trust, and move things forward. When handled poorly, they can damage trust for years. So the first skill to develop is awareness that you are in a high-stakes conversation, awareness of your own emotional state, and awareness of the need for safety in dialogue. Because only when you recognize the moment for what it is can you choose the right way to respond. Part 2, start with heart. Imagine you're driving to a meeting where you must confront a colleague about missing deadlines. You're frustrated, rehearsing in your mind all the ways their delay has caused problems. By the time you arrive, you're fully armed for a battle. Now pause. What's the likely outcome if you enter the room in that emotional state? Chances are, you'll sound defensive, they'll feel attacked, and the conversation will spiral. The authors of Crucial Conversations say the key to avoiding this trap is to start with heart. That means before you open your mouth, you must look inward. Why? Because your motives will guide your words, tone, and actions even if you don't realize it. When people fail in crucial conversations, it's often because they lose sight of what they really want. Instead, they focus on winning, being right, or punishing the other person. This almost always derails the discussion. So the first step in any high-stakes dialogue is to ask yourself, what do I really want for myself? For the other person? For our relationship? Take the example of Lisa, a project manager. She needed to tell her team member, Dan, that his constant lateness was affecting morale. Her first instinct was to lecture him to teach him a lesson. But when she stopped and reflected, she realized her true goal wasn't to humiliate Dan. It was to help him succeed, keep the team productive, and maintain trust between them. That shift in focus completely changed how she approached the conversation. Instead of accusing him, she began by sharing her observations, expressing concern, and asking for his perspective. Dan didn't get defensive, he opened up. They discussed solutions and agreed on a plan. By starting with heart, Lisa achieved her goal without damaging the relationship. But there's another danger. In heated moments, we tend to slip into the fool's choice, the false belief that we must choose between speaking honestly and keeping the peace. For example, you might think, if I'm honest, they'll be upset. But if I keep quiet, the problem continues. It feels like a lose-lose situation. The authors argue that the fool's choice is a myth. You don't have to choose between honesty and harmony, you can have both. The way to do it is to clarify your motives and refuse to let emotions hijack your purpose. One technique is to refocus on your goals whenever you feel yourself getting pulled into anger or defensiveness. Ask yourself, what am I acting like I want right now? What do I actually want? How can I behave in a way that serves that real goal? Here's a powerful illustration from a real corporate conflict. Two department heads, Mark and Jenna, were fighting over resource allocation. Each was convinced the other was selfish and unreasonable. In a mediation session, the facilitator asked them to write down what they truly wanted. Mark realized he wanted his department to succeed, but not at the cost of the company's success. Jenna realized the same thing. Once they acknowledged this shared goal, their tone shifted from combative to collaborative. This is the magic of starting with heart. When you enter a conversation grounded in your true intentions, you create space for respect and problem solving. When you enter driven by ego, you create space for resistance and conflict. Another tool the authors recommend is staying focused on what you want, not what you don't want. It's easy to get stuck listing everything you dislike about the situation or the person. But talking about what you don't want often leads to blame and defensiveness. Talking about what you do want opens the door to constructive dialogue. For example, instead of saying to your teenager, "I'm tired of you never cleaning your room," you might say, "I want us to have a home where we both feel comfortable and respected." That framing shifts the conversation from criticism to shared purpose. Of course, starting with heart doesn't mean avoiding the tough issues. It means approaching them with clarity and compassion. You still talk about missed deadlines, disrespectful behavior, or poor performance, but you do so with the aim of solving, not shaming. In crucial conversations, your heart is like the compass. If you don't check it before you start, you might head in the wrong direction and not even realize it until the relationship is damaged. But if you align it from the beginning, your words will naturally steer toward solutions instead of battles. Here's the takeaway. Before you speak, slow down. Ask yourself the three big questions. What do I want for me? What do I want for them? What do I want for this relationship? Keep those answers in mind, especially when the conversation gets heated. And remember, you don't have to choose between telling the truth and keeping the relationship. With the right mindset, you can do both. Because at the end of the day, crucial conversations are not just about exchanging words. They're about shaping the future of your relationships, your work, and your life. And it all begins with what's in your heart. Part 3, Learn to Look. Picture this. You're in a meeting. Everyone's smiling politely, but you can feel it, tension crackling under the surface. Someone makes a sarcastic remark. Another person suddenly goes silent. The agenda moves forward, but the real conversation, the one that matters, isn't happening. Why? Because no one is noticing the warning signs that the dialogue is breaking down. The authors of Crucial Conversations call this skill learn to look. It's the art of recognizing when a conversation has turned from safe and productive, to risky and emotional. The problem is, most of us get so caught up in our own point of view that we don't see the shift. We think we're still having a rational discussion, but in reality, we've moved into fight or flight mode. The sooner you spot it, the sooner you can get the conversation back on track. So what exactly should you look for? There are two main signals. Signs that safety is at risk, meaning people no longer feel it's okay to speak openly. Signs that people are moving to silence or violence, the two common ways we react when we feel unsafe. Let's unpack that. First, signs safety is at risk. When people believe the conversation isn't safe, they stop sharing honestly. You might notice tension in their tone, short, clipped answers, sarcasm, body language closing off, crossed arms, avoiding eye contact. Sometimes, you'll feel it in yourself too. Your heart rate climbs, your voice sharpens, and suddenly you're more focused on winning than on solving. Second, silence or violence. Silence means people are withdrawing. They might change the subject, avoid answering directly, pretend to agree, then do nothing later, disengage entirely. Violence doesn't mean physical aggression, it's verbal. It includes interrupting, talking over others, sarcasm used as a weapon, attacking the other person's ideas or character. Think of it like this: silence avoids the conversation, violence attacks it. Both shut down real dialogue. The trick is to train yourself to notice these shifts in real time. Take the story of Adam and Priya, two team leads. In their weekly planning session, Priya suggested delaying a product launch by a month. Adam immediately cut her off. "That's ridiculous, we'll lose momentum." Priya's shoulders stiffened. Her eyes went down to her notes. She didn't speak for the rest of the meeting. If Adam had been trained to learn to look, he might have spotted two things. His own reaction was moving toward violence, dismissing and attacking the idea. Priya's reaction shifted to silence, retreating from the conversation. With that awareness, he could have paused, acknowledged the tension, and invited her to share her reasoning. Instead, the real discussion about whether the team was truly ready never happened. Another layer of learn to look is to watch for when emotions take over facts. In crucial conversations, facts are the foundation. Once emotions push them aside, we start telling ourselves stories about the other person's motives, about what they really meant, about why they're wrong. The authors explain that spotting this moment is vital, because it's often the turning point between productive dialogue and destructive conflict. Let's say your boss criticizes your report in front of the team. Fact: they said, "This section isn't clear." Story: they think I'm incompetent. Once the story takes over, your tone, posture, and words shift. You either clam up, silence, or push back aggressively, violence. If you can catch yourself in the moment, you can stop the downward spiral before it gets out of control. So how do you develop this awareness? 1. Observe yourself first. Ask, am I moving towards silence or violence right now? You can't control others until you can control yourself. 2. Then watch the group. Ask, are others shutting down or getting aggressive? If yes, safety is at risk. 3. Name it when you see it. This doesn't mean calling someone out in an accusatory way. Instead, you gently acknowledge it. It feels like we're avoiding this topic. Or, I sense this is getting tense, can we pause for a moment? One of the most powerful examples comes from a healthcare team in a high-stakes surgery. During the operation, a nurse noticed the surgeon missed a crucial sterilization step. She froze. Her silence could have led to a dangerous mistake. Later, in training, she learned to recognize that her fear of speaking up was a sign safety was at risk. By naming it, "Doctor, I'm concerned about this step," she could address the problem without accusation. This skill isn't just for the workplace. It can save friendships, strengthen marriages, and prevent family conflicts from exploding. Because if you can see the moment dialogue starts to crumble, you can stop it before it's too late. Here's the bottom line. Learning to look is about becoming a kind of conversation detective. You watch the words, tone, and body language, both yours and theirs. You notice when safety is slipping. You spot silence and violence before they take over. And most importantly, you act on what you see. You pause, address the safety, and steer back to honest, respectful dialogue. Because in crucial conversations, you can't fix what you can't see. And once you learn to look, you'll see more than you ever realized was there. Part 4, Make it safe. Imagine you're driving on a highway at 100 kilometers per hour, and suddenly, the road ahead turns foggy. You can't see more than a few meters. What's your instinct? You slow down because you can't move forward confidently without safety. Conversations work the same way. When people feel unsafe, they either slam the brakes, silence, or swerve wildly, violence. Progress stops, and instead of solving the problem, you're stuck in confusion, frustration, or conflict. The authors of Crucial Conversations tell us, if you want real dialogue, you have to make it safe. And that's not just a nice thing to do, it's the only way to have meaningful, high-stakes discussions without destroying trust. What does safe mean? In a conversation, safety has nothing to do with physical danger. It's about emotional security, the belief that you respect me. You care about my goals and concerns. If either of these is missing, the other person will shut down or fight back. Safety is like oxygen, invisible when it's there, impossible to ignore when it's gone. Think about the last time you were criticized harshly in front of others. The words may have been about your work, but if you felt disrespected, your instinct was to defend yourself, not to listen. 2 conditions of safety. The authors outline 2 key elements. Mutual purpose, you both believe you're working toward the same overall goal. Mutual respect, you both feel valued as individuals, even if you disagree. Lose one of these, and safety collapses. Your job is to restore them. Restoring mutual purpose. Let's say you and your business partner, Rohan, are arguing about whether to invest in a risky marketing campaign. He wants to go bold, you want to be cautious. The conversation turns heated because you both think the other is blocking success. Here's the thing, your underlying purpose might be the same, you both want the company to grow and succeed. But you've lost sight of that shared goal. To restore mutual purpose, you can step back and ask, what do we both really want here? Find common ground, we both want the business to grow without putting it in danger. Build from that shared point. When people see that you're aiming for the same bigger picture, they become more willing to listen. Restoring mutual respect. Sometimes, the problem isn't purpose, it's respect. Picture this. In a team meeting, your manager says, clearly, you don't understand how this process works. Even if their point is valid, the disrespect in the tone shuts you down instantly. Once respect is lost, no logic will get through until it's repaired. How to restore it? Apologize if you caused harm and mean it. A real apology acknowledges the hurt, not just the mistake. Acknowledge the other person's worth even if you disagree with their idea. Separate the person from the problem, criticize the issue, not the individual. Sometimes, just saying, I realize I spoke too harshly, that wasn't fair to you, can reopen the door. Contrast to avoid misunderstanding. One of the most powerful safety tools is contrasting, clarifying what you don't mean and what you do mean. For example, if a colleague thinks you're attacking their idea, you might say, I don't want you to think I'm dismissing your work. I do want to make sure we're considering all the data before we decide. This removes false assumptions and shows that your intent isn't hostile. Case study, making it safe in real life. A hospital had a problem, nurses were afraid to challenge surgeons when they skipped safety protocols. The surgeons saw questions as disrespect. The nurses saw silence as dangerous. The solution? They created a script for speaking up that began with mutual purpose and mutual respect. Doctor, I know patient safety is your top priority, and I respect your expertise. I'm concerned that we skipped the sterilization step. Can we double-check it? The result, fewer mistakes, better teamwork, and lives saved. Why safety works? When people feel safe, they stop defending and start sharing. Their brain moves from survival mode to problem-solving mode. They listen, they think, and they collaborate. Safety doesn't mean avoiding hard truths, it means creating a space where hard truths can be spoken without fear. Practical steps to make it safe. Spot when safety is lost, watch for silence or violence. Step out of the content, don't keep arguing the point, address the safety issue first. Restore mutual purpose, remind both sides of the shared goal. Restore mutual respect, repair the emotional tone before continuing. Use contrasting, clear up misunderstandings about your intent. The authors make it clear. Safety is not a soft skill, it's a hard requirement for high-stakes conversations. Think of it like this. If dialogue is the engine of progress, safety is the oil. Without it, everything grinds to a halt. So before you push for your point of view, ask yourself. Does this person feel I respect them? Do they know we share a purpose? If the answer is no, Your first job isn't to argue harder, it's to make it safe. Because in crucial conversations, truth travels only where safety paves the road. Part 5, Master My Stories. Picture this. You're walking down the office hallway, and a colleague walks right past you without saying hello. What's your first thought? Wow, they're rude. Did I do something to upset them? Or maybe, they must be angry at me. Before you even know the facts, you've told yourself a story, and that story shapes how you feel and act. The authors of Crucial Conversations tell us that our emotions don't come directly from what people do, they come from the story we tell ourselves about what they did. If we want to manage our reactions in high-stakes moments, we must master our stories. From facts to feelings. Here's how it works. We see and hear something: the colleague didn't say hello. We tell ourselves a story about it: they must dislike me. The story triggers emotions: I feel hurt or defensive. The emotions drive our actions: I ignore them next time, or confront them angrily. The key insight: if you can control the story, you can control the emotions and actions that follow. The dangerous stories we tell. The authors warn about 3 common dangerous stories we tell ourselves during conflict. The victim story: it's not my fault. We paint ourselves as completely innocent and remove our role in the problem. Example: I'm always the one being attacked, they never listen to me. The villain story: it's all their fault. We exaggerate the other person's flaws to justify our anger. Example: they're just lazy and irresponsible. The helpless story: there's nothing I can do. We convince ourselves we're powerless, so we don't take action. Example: that's just how they are, nothing will change. These stories feel true in the moment, but they're often incomplete and they limit our ability to resolve issues. How to master your stories. Step 1. Separate facts from stories. Facts are observable and verifiable. Stories are the interpretations and judgments we layer on top. Fact: the colleague didn't say hello. Story: they're mad at me. When you feel strong emotions, pause and ask yourself, what are the actual facts? What am I adding to those facts? Step 2. Ask, what else could this mean? Instead of sticking to your first story, open up possibilities. Maybe your colleague was distracted. Maybe they had bad news. Maybe they didn't even see you. When you consider alternative explanations, your emotional intensity drops and you stay more open to dialogue. Step 3. Turn victims into actors. If you've told yourself a victim story, ask, what's my role in this? This isn't about blaming yourself, it's about recognizing your influence so you can change the outcome. Step 4. Turn villains into humans. When you villainize someone, you stop seeing them as a person with needs, fears, and reasons. Ask, why would a reasonable, rational, decent person do this? This shifts you from anger to curiosity. Step 5. Turn helpless into able. When you feel powerless, ask, what can I do right now to move forward? Even small steps break the cycle of inaction. Story mastery in action. Let's take a real-life scenario. A manager, Priya, notices that one of her team members, Amit, has missed 2 deadlines. Her first story: he doesn't care about his work. This makes her frustrated, so in their meeting, her tone is sharp. But before confronting him, she separates fact from story. Fact: 2 deadlines were missed. Story: he's lazy. She then asks, what else could explain this? It turns out Amit has been covering extra work for a sick colleague and didn't want to complain. The issue wasn't laziness, it was overload. By mastering her story, Priya avoided a damaging confrontation and found a solution: redistributing the workload. The link between stories and safety. Mastering your stories also protects safety in conversations. If you walk in believing the other person is the villain, your tone, words, and body language will reflect hostility and safety will collapse. But if you enter thinking, they probably have reasons I don't know yet, you create space for dialogue instead of conflict. Practical tools to master your stories. Notice your emotions. Strong feelings are a signal that you're telling yourself a story. Pause before reacting. Give yourself a mental gap between event and response. Ask diagnostic questions. What's the fact? What's the story? Challenge your assumptions. What else could be true? Own your part. Acknowledge how you may have contributed to the problem. Why this matters. If you don't master your stories will master you. They'll push you into anger, defensiveness, or withdrawal before you've even confirmed what's real. When you control your stories, you control your emotions. When you control your emotions, you control your actions. And when you control your actions, you can steer crucial conversations toward resolution, not destruction. So the next time you feel your blood pressure rise, ask yourself, am I reacting to facts, or to a story I've created? Because if the story is wrong, your feelings and your reaction will be wrong too. Master your stories, and you master the conversation. Master the conversation, and you master the outcome. Part 6, State my path. Imagine this. You're sitting in a meeting. Someone suggests a plan you know will fail. You've seen it happen before. Your heart rate climbs. You want to speak up, but you're worried. If you're too direct, you might offend them. If you stay silent, the team could make a costly mistake. How do you express your view honestly without shutting others down? This is where the author's principle State My Path comes in. What is State My Path? State is a 5-step method to share your perspective in a way that is clear, confident, and respectful. Share your facts. Tell your story. Ask for others' paths. Talk tentatively. Encourage testing. Step 1, share your facts. Facts are the least controversial and most persuasive part of your message. They're the concrete evidence everyone can see or verify. Example, instead of saying, the project is behind because of poor planning, you could say, we've missed 3 milestones in the past 2 weeks. Facts give you a strong, neutral foundation. They remove emotion and accusation. Step 2, tell your story. After the facts, explain the meaning you've drawn from them. This is where you connect the dots, but remember your story is just your interpretation, not the ultimate truth. Example, because of these missed milestones, I'm concerned we may not meet the client deadline. By presenting your story as your perspective, you invite conversation instead of conflict. Step 3, ask for others' paths. Don't just present your view, seek theirs. Ask questions like, how do you see it? Am I missing something? What's your perspective? This shows that you value their input, even if it differs from yours. When people feel heard, they're more willing to hear you. Step 4, talk tentatively. This doesn't mean being weak, it means being humble. You share your point of view without sounding like you have all the answers. Instead of, we're going to fail if we keep doing this, say, I'm concerned this approach might not get us to the deadline. Tentative language keeps the door open for dialogue. Step 5, encourage testing. Invite others to challenge your thinking. You can say, if you see it differently, I want to hear why. Help me see what I might be missing. When you actively welcome disagreement, you create a safe space for honest conversation. State in real life. Let's walk through a real scenario. Ravi, a marketing manager, notices that his team's new campaign isn't attracting as many leads as expected. He's worried that the budget will be wasted. Here's how he could use state. Share facts. We've run the campaign for 2 weeks, and the click-through rate is 40% lower than our average. Tell story. I'm concerned this trend will hurt our sales numbers for the quarter. Ask for others' paths. What's your take on these results so far? Talk tentatively. It seems like our current targeting may not be reaching the right audience. Encourage testing. Does anyone see it differently, or have suggestions for a different approach? The result. Instead of defensive arguments, the team opens up, explores options, and agrees to adjust targeting, all without damaging relationships. Why state works? State strikes a balance between honesty and respect. It allows you to share your viewpoint without being pushy, and to challenge ideas without challenging people's worth. By starting with facts, you keep the conversation grounded. By telling your story, you explain your reasoning. By asking for others' views, you create collaboration. By talking tentatively, you remove ego. By encouraging testing, you build trust. Common mistakes to avoid. Starting with your story instead of facts leads to emotional reactions. Sounding certain and absolute shuts down discussion. Asking for others' views but not actually listening makes people feel ignored. Skipping the encourage testing step reduces openness to alternative ideas. The bigger picture. State my path isn't just for office meetings. It works in personal relationships, family discussions, and any situation where opinions differ. Imagine telling your spouse. You didn't call when you were going to be late. Fact. I felt worried something might have happened. Story. Is there a reason you couldn't call? Ask. Maybe there's a better way for us to handle this in the future. Tentative. What do you think? Encourage testing. This creates a constructive conversation instead of a heated argument. From conflict to collaboration. When tensions are high, people often swing to two extremes. Silence, avoiding the issue. Violence, pushing their opinion aggressively. State offers a third path, respectful candor. It's about expressing yourself fully while staying genuinely open to others. The authors remind us, you can be 100% honest and 100% respectful at the same time. You just need the right structure, and that's exactly what State gives you. Your next conversation. Think about a conversation you've been avoiding because you fear conflict. How could you frame it using State? What are the facts? What's your story? How will you invite their perspective? How will you speak tentatively? How will you welcome challenges? Write it out, practice it, and then have the conversation. You may be surprised at how much smoother it goes. Remember, the goal isn't to win the argument. The goal is to create shared understanding so you can work toward a solution together. When you state your path, you're not just speaking your mind. You're guiding the conversation toward clarity, safety, and collaboration. Part 7, Move to Action. Picture this. You've just had a breakthrough conversation. Everyone has shared their thoughts openly, reached common ground, and agreed that yes, we need to do something. And then, nothing happens. Weeks pass, and the same problem remains. Why? Because the conversation ended without clear action. The final step of a crucial conversation is to turn dialogue into results to move to action. Why moving to action matters. The authors point out that many great discussions fail not because of poor communication, but because no one decides what to do next. It's like planning a road trip and then never getting in the car. Without clear action steps, people assume someone else will handle it. Efforts are duplicated or worse, forgotten. Frustration builds, and trust is lost. A crucial conversation isn't truly complete until you've answered. Who will do what, by when, and how will we follow up? From talk to task. The book outlines a practical process to ensure ideas turn into results. Decide how to decide. Document the decisions. Assign clear responsibilities. Set deadlines. Follow up and hold people accountable. Step 1, decide how to decide. Not every decision needs a group vote. Before you jump into action, clarify who gets to make the call. There are 4 main decision methods. Command, one person decides, often in emergencies. Consult, one person decides after seeking input. Vote, majority rules. Consensus, everyone agrees before moving forward. The method you choose depends on the urgency, complexity, and importance of buy-in. Step 2, document the decisions. Once a decision is made, write it down, whether in meeting notes, a shared document, or a project tracker. If it isn't documented, it's easy for people to forget or reinterpret what was agreed upon. Step 3, assign clear responsibilities. The most dangerous words in a meeting are, "We'll handle it." Who is we? That vague promise often means nobody does the work. Instead, assign a specific name to each task. Anita will prepare the proposal. Ravi will follow up with the vendor. Clarity avoids confusion. Step 4, set deadlines. A task without a time frame is just a wish. Instead of saying, "Let's get this done soon," say, "Let's have this completed by Friday at 3 p.m. Deadlines create urgency and allow for progress tracking. Step 5, follow up and hold people accountable. Accountability is where many teams stumble. Follow-up isn't about micromanaging, it's about making sure commitments are honored. A simple follow-up process might look like weekly progress check-ins, quick status updates in team chat, end-of-project reviews to see what worked and what didn't. A real-life example. Let's imagine a team working on a software launch. During a crucial conversation, they agree that the product needs more user testing before release. Without a clear action plan, here's what happens. One member assumes testing will start next week. Another assumes the marketing team is already working on it. The developer thinks the decision was just a suggestion. Result: confusion, delay, and frustration. With a move to action plan, it sounds like this. Decision method: consensus reached. Document: meeting notes sent within 24 hours. Assign: Priya will lead testing, John will recruit test users. Deadline: testing begins Monday, results reviewed Friday. Follow up: progress check-in on Wednesday via Zoom. The difference: the plan is clear, visible, and trackable. The accountability mindset: holding people accountable doesn't have to feel like policing. It's about protecting commitments. If someone misses a deadline, you revisit the crucial conversation skills. Start with the facts: the report was due yesterday and I haven't received it. Share your story: I'm concerned we may miss our client's timeline. Ask for their perspective: what happened? Move toward a solution: what's the new plan? By keeping accountability respectful, you maintain trust while ensuring results. Common pitfalls to avoid: vague agreements: if it's not specific, it's not real. No ownership: without a named person, tasks vanish. No follow-up: people assume everything's fine until it's too late. Overcomplicating the process: keep action steps simple and direct. Why this step completes the circle. The beauty of crucial conversations is that it starts with safety and honesty, moves through clarity and respect, and ends with results. You can have the most insightful, emotionally intelligent conversation in the world. But if nothing changes afterward, it was just a nice chat. Moving to action is the bridge from words to impact. Your challenge: think about the last important discussion you had at work, with family, or with friends. Did it end with clear action? If not, revisit it. Clarify the decision method. Confirm who's responsible. Agree on a timeline. Set a follow-up. Because in the end, conversation is the starting point, action is the destination. This concludes our journey through crucial conversations. We've learned how to stay in dialogue under pressure, create safety, master our emotions, explore others' perspectives, share our own path respectfully, and finally, move to action. Remember, it's not just about talking better, it's about living better. Because when you master crucial conversations, you master your relationships, your results, and your life. If you found value in this audiobook-style summary, don't forget to subscribe to Books Arena for more powerful insights from life-changing books. Your next great conversation might just change everything. Welcome to Books Arena. Today, we're diving into one of the most intense, inspiring, and brutally honest stories of mental toughness and transformation. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. This isn't just a book about physical endurance or military achievements. It's a powerful journey into the mind of a man who turned pain, trauma, and self-doubt into fuel to become one of the toughest people alive. David Goggins faced unimaginable challenges: an abusive childhood, racism, poverty, obesity, and self-doubt. But instead of being defeated, he chose a path of relentless self-discipline and radical accountability. Through grueling Navy SEAL training, ultra-endurance races, and pushing past limits most people won't even approach, Goggins developed a mindset that defies pain and hardship. Can't Hurt Me teaches us that most of us live in only 40% of our potential, and that the key to unlocking more is through embracing struggle, mastering your mind, and refusing to be a victim of circumstance. If you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or limited by your own fears and doubts, this summary is for you. Get ready to learn how to take control of your mind, build unbreakable resilience, and push beyond what you thought was possible. Let's begin the journey into Can't Hurt Me, the story of one man's quest to become unstoppable. Part 1: Early life and formative struggles. David Goggins' story begins in a world of hardship, pain, and struggle. Born in 1975 in Buffalo, New York, David didn't have a childhood many would envy. His early years were shaped by an abusive father who terrorized the family with physical violence and intimidation. This constant atmosphere of fear left deep scars. His father's rage wasn't just random, it was fueled by his own frustrations and the harsh realities they faced as a black family in a racially tense environment. David and his siblings often faced racial discrimination not only outside but within their community and schools. Living in poverty, the family struggled to make ends meet. There was little stability, and young David was frequently exposed to violence and hardship. It was a world where trust was scarce and survival depended on toughness. At school, David faced another set of challenges. He struggled academically due to undiagnosed learning disabilities. Dyslexia made reading and writing difficult, and David was often mocked or underestimated by teachers and classmates. This only deepened his feelings of isolation and failure. The emotional toll was immense. David internalized a belief that he was weak, broken, and incapable. He saw himself as less than everyone else. The combination of abuse, racism, poverty, and academic struggle created a perfect storm of low self-esteem and self-doubt. Yet, even in this bleak environment, a flicker of resilience was forming. David learned early that life was not going to hand him anything. Comfort was scarce. If he wanted to survive, he had to be tough, both physically and mentally. One of the earliest turning points in David's journey was his discovery of what he calls the accountability mirror. This simple but profound tool became a cornerstone of his transformation later in life. The accountability mirror is a concept David developed to confront himself honestly every single day. He would write down his weaknesses, failures, and the brutal truths he didn't want to face on sticky notes and place them directly on his bathroom mirror. Every morning, he looked himself in the eye and read those notes aloud. You have to own your story, no excuses. You have to be brutally honest about where you are and where you want to go. This practice forced David to stop hiding behind excuses or blaming his circumstances. It was a radical form of self-accountability. Why is this so important? Because too many people live their lives avoiding uncomfortable truths. We make excuses, rationalize failures, or blame others for our problems. David's method showed that facing your truth, no matter how painful, is the first step toward real change. But owning your truth is not the same as changing your reality. In his early years, David felt stuck in a cycle of helplessness. He wanted to be different but lacked the roadmap or confidence to do so. The abuse, the bullying, the constant no from life, weighed heavily. There were moments when David nearly gave up on himself entirely. One vivid story he shares is about a time when he tried to run away from home as a young teenager. He was desperate to escape the pain but quickly realized there was no easy way out. The streets were just as dangerous, and he had nowhere safe to go. That moment was a harsh lesson: pain follows you until you decide to face it. Instead of running, David had to find a way to face his fears head-on. Another key element from this time was David's complicated relationship with his own body. By the time he was a teenager, he was overweight, out of shape, and struggling with his identity. He was bullied not just for his race or family situation but also for his physical appearance. This combination left him deeply insecure and motivated him, albeit quietly, to one day change. Yet, the transformation seemed impossible. Most of his environment told him otherwise. His teachers, peers, and even some family members doubted he would amount to anything. This crushing low expectation became part of the internal narrative David had to overcome. Despite all this, David kept a stubborn spark alive, a belief that he was meant for something more. He didn't know how he would get there, but the seed of self-reliance and accountability was planted. One of the most important lessons from David's early years is that hardship alone doesn't create resilience. Many people suffer but don't overcome. What sets people like David apart is their ability to take control of their narrative. David realized he had a choice: be a victim of circumstance or become the author of his own life. This realization was not immediate, it was a process of pain, reflection, and small victories. Another powerful theme from these formative years is the role of embracing discomfort. David learned that the world is often hostile and unfair. You can't wait for life to be easy or perfect to start pushing yourself. Instead, the path to growth is through confronting pain, fear, and failure regularly. This philosophy would become the foundation of everything he built later. So, David's early life sets the stage for an incredible transformation. A young boy shaped by pain and struggle, but refusing to let that define his future. Through brutal honesty, accountability, and a growing hunger for change, David began to build the mental toughness that would one day make him one of the toughest men alive. This first part of Can't Hurt Me teaches us: your past doesn't have to dictate your future. Real change starts with radical honesty with yourself. Resilience is built by facing, not avoiding, your fears and pain. In the next part, we'll see how David took the first bold steps to change his life, shedding his limiting beliefs and starting a journey of extreme physical and mental transformation. Part 2, the decision to change and initial transformation. After a childhood filled with pain, fear, and self-doubt, David Goggins reached a critical crossroads in his early adulthood. He had spent years feeling stuck, overweight, unhappy, and trapped by the limits others and even he himself had set. By the time David was in his early 20s, he weighed over 300 pounds. His health was in jeopardy, and his future seemed uncertain. He had no clear path, no purpose driving him forward. Most people in his situation might have accepted that this was just how life is. But David was different. In one of the most pivotal moments of his life, David decided to take full responsibility for his situation. No more excuses, no more blaming the past or his environment. He understood that the only way out was through total commitment to change. This decision wasn't easy. Transformation rarely is. It meant embracing brutal discipline, facing pain, and dismantling lifelong limiting beliefs. David's first step was fitness. He knew he had to get his body in shape before anything else could change. But even this simple idea was overwhelming when he was obese, out of shape, and lacked experience. He started running, not because he loved it, but because he needed a way to push himself. The first runs were agonizing. His body ached, his lungs burned, and his mind screamed to quit. But quitting wasn't an option anymore. David relied heavily on the lessons he had learned from his accountability mirror, reminding himself every day why he had to change. He also began reading everything he could find about mental toughness, discipline, and self-improvement. One concept that stuck with him was the idea that most people only use about 40% of their potential. This 40% rule became a beacon, a way to push beyond what felt comfortable or possible. If he felt like quitting, he told himself he was only at 40% of what he could endure. There was so much more inside him. As David continued pushing his physical limits, something remarkable happened. He discovered that pain and discomfort were not enemies. They were signals that growth was happening. Each painful run, each aching muscle, was proof he was breaking old limits and building new strength. David's physical transformation started to accelerate, but even more importantly, his mindset was evolving. He began to see himself not as a victim of circumstances, but as a warrior in a battle for his own life. This shift in identity was crucial. David realized that transformation wasn't just about losing weight or running faster. It was about reprogramming his mind, forging unbreakable mental toughness. One of the most powerful tools David used was setting impossible goals. He didn't just want to be fit. He wanted to be a Navy SEAL. This goal was audacious. He wasn't physically or mentally prepared. He was overweight and had no military experience. But setting such a high bar gave him direction and purpose. David committed fully to this goal. He began intense workouts, running, biking, swimming to build endurance. He changed his diet and lifestyle. He studied the requirements and expectations of SEAL training. But the physical challenge was only half the battle. SEAL training, especially Hell Week, is as much about mental toughness as it is physical strength. David knew he had to prepare his mind for the torture ahead. He developed a mental framework to face extreme adversity. One of the key concepts was the cookie jar. The cookie jar is a mental vault of past victories, times when you overcame pain, fear, or failure. When things get unbearable, you reach into your cookie jar and remind yourself of those wins. This practice gave David strength in moments when his body wanted to give up. By the time David started Navy SEAL training, he was transformed in many ways, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But the journey was far from over. SEAL training pushed him to the brink and beyond. He faced injuries, self-doubt, and near-death experiences. But the discipline and mindset he cultivated in those early transformation years carried him through. David's story during this period shows us that real change demands radical commitment and accountability. You can't half commit and expect extraordinary results. Transformation is as much mental as it is physical. Changing your body without changing your mindset is incomplete. Setting audacious goals creates purpose and direction. Even if the goal feels impossible, it motivates progress. Pain and discomfort are signs of growth, not failure. Learning to embrace and use them is key to pushing limits. David's decision to change wasn't a quick fix. It was a long, painful process of breaking old habits and building new ones. But every small victory fueled the fire. By embracing suffering, holding himself accountable, and committing to relentless improvement, David began the journey that would make him one of the toughest men alive. In the next part, we'll dive into his grueling experience with Navy SEAL training, how he overcame extreme physical and mental challenges, and the lessons he learned from pushing himself beyond what most people can imagine. Part 3, Navy SEAL training and extreme challenges. David Goggins's decision to become a Navy SEAL was a bold and audacious goal, especially given where he started physically and mentally. But this chapter of his journey would define his life in ways nothing else could. The path to becoming a SEAL is one of the most grueling military challenges in the world. The infamous Hell Week is a relentless test of endurance, strength, and, most of all, mental toughness. It's designed to break even the toughest candidates. When David first began his training, he was pushed to extremes he never imagined. His body was constantly in pain, battered by cold water, brutal physical exertion, and sleep deprivation. His mind fought exhaustion and the desire to quit at every moment. But what made David different was his mental approach. He had learned to embrace the suffering instead of fearing it. Every moment of pain was a chance to prove his resilience and grow stronger. One of his key mental tools during training was the cookie jar. This isn't a literal jar but a mental strategy. Whenever he faced overwhelming difficulty, he reached into his cookie jar, a collection of memories of past victories, moments when he overcame obstacles. By recalling these moments, he reminded himself that he had the strength and willpower to endure anything. The cookie jar became a powerful motivator, especially during Hell Week, when the body screams to stop. David also learned to quiet his mind, controlling the inner voice that said "I can't." Instead of fighting his thoughts, he observed them and pushed past them, often by breaking challenges down into small, manageable steps. But the physical trials weren't the only obstacles. David also had to overcome his own self-doubt and fears. He was not the fastest swimmer or the strongest candidate. Injuries and setbacks threatened to derail his journey. At one point, he developed a serious heart condition and was told he might never qualify. Most people would have given up. David didn't. He underwent surgery, committed to a brutal rehabilitation, and fought to get back in shape. This period tested not only his physical limits but his mental resolve. His refusal to quit, even when the odds were stacked against him, became a hallmark of his character. Finally, after multiple attempts and relentless perseverance, David graduated as a Navy SEAL, a transformation few thought possible given his background. This achievement marked a turning point. It was proof that mental toughness could overcome almost any obstacle. David's time as a SEAL only deepened his understanding of suffering and resilience. He completed multiple deployments in hostile environments, but what defined him wasn't just battlefield bravery, it was his dedication to pushing himself beyond conventional limits. David didn't stop at becoming a SEAL. He went on to tackle even more extreme challenges. He became an ultramarathon runner, setting records in some of the world's toughest endurance races. These races took him across deserts, mountains, and icy landscapes, often running for dozens of hours straight, battling exhaustion, injury, and the threat of failure. In these moments, the mental lessons from his Navy training were critical. He relied on the cookie jar, the 40% rule, and his ability to control his mind in the face of overwhelming pain. David's story during this phase shows us that mental strength is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. But it's also about consistency. Mental toughness isn't built overnight, it's forged through daily, relentless effort. David's journey teaches us that the greatest limits we face are often self-imposed. We quit long before our bodies give out. We tell ourselves stories of why we can't succeed, stories built from fear and doubt. David challenges us to rewrite those stories. He shows that by facing pain head-on, by embracing discomfort and suffering, we can push far beyond what we think possible. In this part of Can't Hurt Me, the lessons are clear. Mental toughness is the key to overcoming extreme challenges. Embracing pain instead of avoiding it builds resilience. Using past victories as fuel, the cookie jar, helps push through hardship. Persistence despite setbacks defines true strength. David's Navy SEAL journey is one of relentless determination, mental mastery, and transformation. It reminds us that anyone can push beyond their limits, but it requires courage, discipline, and an unbreakable mindset. In the next part, we'll explore David's transition from military service to ultra-endurance racing, a world where his mental toughness was tested in new ways and where he broke records by pushing his body and mind to the absolute edge. Part 4, Ultra-endurance and pushing limits. After completing his Navy SEAL training and serving in the military, David Goggins didn't slow down. Instead, he shifted his focus to an entirely different kind of challenge: ultra-endurance racing. These races are not your typical marathons, they test the limits of human endurance, often covering hundreds of miles across some of the most grueling environments on Earth. For David, ultra-endurance events became the new battlefield. The stakes were no longer just about life and death in combat but about conquering the physical and mental limits of his own body. David's entry into this world was not easy. He was still carrying the weight of his past, and the physical toll of his earlier life struggles had left him vulnerable to injury. But, true to form, David approached ultra-endurance with the same relentless mindset he had developed in the military. One of his first big races was the Badwater 135, a 135-mile race through Death Valley in California during summer, where temperatures can soar above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's considered one of the toughest foot races in the world. Few people even attempt it. David not only attempted it, he finished it. More impressively, he finished it after suffering severe dehydration and injury during the race. But it wasn't just finishing that mattered, it was how he did it. David pushed himself to the brink of collapse, embracing the pain, the exhaustion, and the despair that would have broken most competitors. The lessons from his Navy SEAL training carried over, particularly his mental tools. The cookie jar technique was crucial here, as was the famous 40% rule. David explains that when your mind tells you you're done, you're actually only about 40% done. There's a vast reserve of untapped potential inside everyone, but few people learn how to access it. Through years of ultra-endurance racing, David refined his ability to control his mind during extreme physical suffering. He learned to quiet the negative voices, break down pain into manageable moments, and focus on incremental progress. David also developed what he calls call using the mind. Just as your hands develop calluses after repeated physical work, your mind can toughen through repeated exposure to discomfort and adversity. He sought out pain and suffering as training grounds to strengthen his mental calluses. His endurance races weren't just about personal glory. They were battles against his own inner demons, the self-doubt, fear, and limiting beliefs born in his childhood. Every mile conquered was a victory over his past. David's extreme physical feats set new standards. He went on to complete dozens of ultramarathons, ultra-triathlons, and even broke the world record for the most pull-ups done in 24 hours, another testament to his commitment to pushing limits. But more than the physical accomplishments, David's ultra-endurance career teaches profound lessons about the power of the human spirit. Suffering is inevitable, but pain is optional. You can't avoid suffering, but how you respond to it defines your strength. Mental toughness is learned, not innate. Anyone can build it through deliberate practice and exposure to discomfort. The mind and body are connected. Physical challenges shape mental resilience, and mental resilience fuels physical endurance. Limits exist mostly in the mind. When you believe you're done, you're only partway there. There's always more to give. David's ultra-endurance journey also reveals the importance of purpose. His motivation was never just to finish races or set records. It was about proving to himself and to anyone who doubted him that you can redefine what's possible through sheer willpower and discipline. This period of David's life reflects the essence of the "can't hurt me" philosophy: embrace the grind, welcome suffering, and use it as a tool to become stronger. Yet, this wasn't an easy path. David's body took a heavy toll from years of intense physical strain. He suffered injuries, exhaustion, and the mental strain of pushing beyond limits. But even then, he refused to quit. David teaches that there is a balance between pushing hard and knowing your body. The goal is not reckless self-destruction but purposeful growth. His ultra-endurance story is a testament to how far the human mind and body can go when fueled by discipline, accountability, and relentless grit. For anyone feeling stuck or limited, David's journey offers a powerful reminder. Your potential is far greater than you think. Suffering and struggle are not barriers but bridges to growth. If you commit to the process, if you master your mind, you can push beyond what you believed possible. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the mental strategies David uses every day, how he mastered his mindset, the 40% rule in detail, and the daily practices that keep him disciplined and unbreakable. Part 5, Mindset Mastery and the 40% Rule. One of the most powerful ideas in Can't Hurt Me and perhaps David Goggins' signature mental tool is the 40% rule. This concept fundamentally challenges how we think about limits and potential. David explains that when your mind is telling you that you're done, that you can't go any further, you're actually only at about 40% of your capacity. In other words, most people operate far below their true potential because their minds give up long before their bodies do. This revelation was a game changer for David. It helped him push through moments of extreme pain and exhaustion during his Navy SEAL training, ultramarathons, and life challenges. The 40% rule became a mental lever, a way to tap into reserves of strength and endurance hidden beneath the surface. But the 40% rule isn't just about physical endurance, It applies to every area of life where you feel stuck or limited. It teaches us that our biggest limitations are often mental, created by fear, doubt, and the stories we tell ourselves. To master this mindset, David developed a series of mental strategies and daily practices that helped him build unbreakable discipline and resilience. First is the idea of using the mind, which we touched on earlier. Just as you build physical calluses by working your hands hard, you build mental toughness by intentionally seeking out discomfort and challenges. You expose yourself to stress regularly and learn to endure it. David didn't shy away from pain. He sought it. He ran ultra-marathons in freezing cold, pushed his body in Navy SEAL Hell Week, and constantly set new goals just beyond his current abilities. Each time he pushed through suffering, his mind grew stronger, more resilient. Another key practice David uses is the accountability mirror, a daily ritual of self-honesty. He writes down the hard truths about his weaknesses and shortcomings on sticky notes, places them on his mirror, and reads them aloud every day. This brutal honesty forces him to confront excuses and lies he might tell himself and drives continuous improvement. This practice is about owning your story without sugarcoating it. It's a wake-up call and a call to action at the same time. David also talks about the importance of embracing the suck. Life is hard. You can't avoid pain or discomfort, but you can choose to lean into it instead of running away. By accepting that suffering is part of growth, you remove its power to defeat you. This philosophy flips the usual mindset of avoiding pain and seeking comfort. David shows that comfort zones are prisons, and true freedom comes from pushing beyond them. Another mental tool is breaking down overwhelming challenges into small, manageable steps. When facing brutal physical pain or mental fatigue, David focuses on just getting through the next moment, just one more step, just one more breath. This keeps the mind from becoming paralyzed by the magnitude of the task and helps build momentum. David's mindset mastery also involves redefining failure. He doesn't see failure as the end but as a stepping stone, a lesson to be learned. Each setback was a chance to get stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the next challenge. This ability to reframe failure transformed his approach to life and challenges. Another profound lesson from David's mindset work is the importance of purpose and why. It's not enough to just push through pain, you need a deep, meaningful reason why you endure. David's why was shaped by his desire to overcome his past and prove to himself and the world that he was not defined by pain or limitations. This purpose fueled his grit and kept him moving forward when everything inside wanted to stop. Finally, David emphasizes the power of self-discipline as the foundation for lasting change. Discipline isn't about motivation or inspiration, which come and go. It's about showing up every day, doing the work even when you don't feel like it. Whether it's training, work, or personal growth, discipline creates habits and consistency that build unstoppable momentum. David's story shows us that mental mastery is not a fixed trait, it's a skill that can be developed and strengthened with practice. It requires brutal honesty, embracing discomfort, reframing failure, and living with purpose. The 40% rule is a powerful reminder that we all have untapped reserves of strength waiting to be unleashed. If you can learn to push past your perceived limits, your potential is nearly limitless. In the next part, we'll explore David's most extreme challenges and the lessons he's learned from facing life-threatening moments, showing how resilience can be built even in the darkest hours. Part 6, Facing Life-Threatening Challenges and Building Resilience. David Goggins' story is not just about pushing limits in controlled environments like races or military training. It's also about how he confronted and survived truly life-threatening challenges and how those moments shaped his mental toughness and resilience. One of the most dramatic incidents happened in 2006 during an ultra-endurance race. David had already earned a reputation for taking on brutal events, but this race tested him like never before. During the event, he suffered from extreme dehydration, kidney failure, and severe damage to his body. He was on the brink of collapse, his life hanging in the balance. Medical professionals warned him that continuing could cause permanent damage or even death. Most people would have stopped immediately. But David's mindset is different. He saw pain and suffering not as signals to quit, but as opportunities to grow stronger. His mind told him to push forward, no matter the cost. This willingness to endure extreme hardship has risks, but for David, it was part of mastering his own limits. His story reminds us that resilience is not about avoiding pain or risk but about facing it head-on with courage. David also faced life-threatening heart issues earlier in his life. As he pushed his body to extremes, he was diagnosed with a serious heart condition. His heart's function was severely impaired, and doctors gave him grim warnings. But rather than surrender, David committed to healing and strengthening his heart through disciplined training and lifestyle changes. He used the same mental toughness that carried him through Hell Week and ultramarathons to recover and come back stronger. These experiences taught David a powerful lesson: resilience is about more than physical toughness. It's about the will to live, adapt, and overcome even when the odds are stacked against you. Another critical factor in building resilience is how David dealt with setbacks and failure. Throughout his journey, he encountered injuries, disappointments, and moments when quitting seemed like the easiest option. But he cultivated a mindset of radical ownership. Instead of blaming circumstances or making excuses, he took full responsibility for his situation and his reactions. This level of accountability gave him control over his life. David also stresses the importance of building a callus on your mind, repeatedly exposing yourself to hardship so that when real adversity strikes, it doesn't break you. He intentionally sought out discomfort, whether through freezing water immersion, extreme exercise, or facing emotional pain. This hardening of the mind allowed him to remain calm and focused in crises. His story shows that true resilience comes from preparation, not luck or innate toughness. You build it piece by embracing struggle before it's forced on you. David's approach to life-threatening challenges also involves mental reframing. He views pain and fear as signals that he's growing, not as reasons to retreat. When faced with danger or extreme difficulty, he asks himself, "What can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? What part of me will I prove wrong by enduring this?" This mindset shifts suffering from a negative experience to a powerful tool for growth. David's story of resilience teaches us that resilience is cultivated, not born. Facing and embracing life's hardest moments builds unbreakable mental strength. Radical accountability and ownership give you control even in chaos. Mental call using prepares you for unexpected crises. Reframing fear and pain changes your relationship with adversity. Ultimately, David's life shows that no matter how hard life hits, you can choose how to respond. You can let suffering defeat you, or you can use it to become stronger than you ever imagined. In the final part of Can't Hurt Me, we'll explore how David maintains his relentless discipline and mental toughness every day, the habits, routines, and mindset that keep him can't hurt no matter what life throws at him. Part 7, Daily Discipline and Living the Can't Hurt Me Philosophy. David Goggins's incredible journey from an abused child to Navy SEAL, ultra-endurance athlete, and mental toughness icon is powered not just by singular moments of courage but by the daily discipline that underpins everything he does. In Can't Hurt Me, David emphasizes that true transformation and mental mastery aren't just about pushing through big challenges. They are built in the small, everyday decisions and routines that create unstoppable momentum. For David, discipline is the ultimate equalizer. Motivation fades. Inspiration is fleeting. But discipline is what shows up day after day, rain or shine, pain or comfort, when you don't feel like it. One of his key routines is his early morning workouts. David wakes up hours before most people, often before dawn, to train his body and mind. Whether it's running, cycling, swimming, or calisthenics, he commits to grinding through the discomfort even when every part of him wants to quit. This morning discipline isn't just physical. It's a mental practice of commitment and accountability. Showing up when it's hard trains his brain to handle bigger challenges with calm and focus. David also uses what he calls the accountability mirror every day. This practice involves writing brutally honest notes to himself about his weaknesses and goals, placing them on his mirror, and reading them aloud every morning. It's a ritual of self-honesty that drives continuous growth and refuses to let excuses take root. His approach to discipline is ruthless but effective. He believes that most people live their lives in a state of comfort and avoid real challenge. Comfort zones, he says, are prisons that keep us from reaching our true potential. So he deliberately seeks pain and suffering as training grounds to build mental calluses. Whether it's freezing cold water immersion, running ultramarathons, or holding difficult conversations, David embraces hardship as the path to growth. Another cornerstone of his daily philosophy is visualization and preparation. David prepares mentally for challenges by visualizing worst-case scenarios and rehearsing his responses. This mental rehearsal reduces fear and sharpens focus when the moment arrives. He also constantly pushes his limits with new goals and challenges, refusing to settle or plateau. This approach ensures that his mind stays sharp, adaptable, and unbreakable. David's philosophy is deeply rooted in ownership and accountability. He refuses to blame circumstances, other people, or even his difficult past. Instead, He owns every part of his life story, the good and the bad, and uses it as fuel. This level of ownership frees him from victimhood and empowers action. Finally, David emphasizes the importance of purpose. His relentless discipline isn't just about toughness or endurance, it's about living a life aligned with his deepest values. His purpose to prove that anyone can overcome their limitations and rewrite their story keeps him grounded and motivated. For listeners, David's daily discipline and mindset offer clear lessons. Show up every day, even when it's hard. Consistency builds unstoppable momentum. Embrace discomfort and suffering as essential to growth, not as obstacles. Use brutal honesty to hold yourself accountable and refuse excuses. Visualize and prepare mentally to reduce fear and sharpen focus. Own your story completely, don't let your past define or limit you. Connect with a deeper purpose that fuels persistence and grit. David Goggins's life is a testament to the power of discipline and mindset. He proves that greatness isn't about talent or luck, it's about the daily commitment to push past pain, rewrite limiting beliefs, and keep moving forward no matter what. By adopting even some of his daily practices and mental tools, anyone can begin building the resilience and mental toughness to overcome their own challenges. So whether you're facing physical trials, emotional struggles, or professional obstacles, remember David's message. You are capable of far more than you think. By embracing suffering, owning your life, and committing to relentless discipline, you truly can't hurt. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. His story is more than an autobiography, it's a masterclass in mental toughness, discipline, and the human spirit's capacity to overcome. If there's one key takeaway, it's this: the limits you see are often the limits you accept. David challenges us all to push past those boundaries, embrace discomfort, and rewrite our stories with courage and relentless effort. If you found value in this summary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new book breakdown here on Books Arena. And tell us in the comments which part of David Goggins' story inspired you the most. Or how do you plan to apply his lessons in your life? Remember, the journey to becoming unbreakable starts with one step, so keep pushing, keep grinding, and keep becoming. Until next time, this is Books Arena, where every book fuels your growth. Stay strong, stay hungry.